Hey guys, it's Cashew. So, a friend of mine sent me this post. This went up about 2 weeks ago on Reddit, so some of y'all may have seen it. But this is a post talking about skill correlation in League of Legends. You can see on the graphs here, we've got dots correlating to each skills or each rank's color, and they go up or down or don't go anywhere on a graph. When the graph goes up, the win rate goes up based on the rank. So you have a dot here where Gangplank's iron win rate is probably, this is like sub 50, and then in Masters it goes up to 55, or maybe 60. I'm gonna assume that's like 54. Yorick's, his win rate in Iron maybe is 49%, going up to 51 in Bronze, and then going down, down, down until it starts to level out in Diamond Masters. And then Renekton, his win rate is about the same across all ranks. This has been quantified into a single number that this guy's calling skill correlation. The higher ranked a character gets, their win rate increases or decreases, like, more, based on the larger the number. A 1.0 on this graph, you can see Rengar and Qiyana right here of 1.0, means that they have the highest skill correlation in the game. Not that they get twice as good or whatever, but just that they have the highest. And Yorick has the lowest at a negative 1.0. So this is all relative, right? There isn't an absolute max or an absolute minimum. This doesn't mean Yorick's win rate goes down by exactly 10% or whatever. This is all relative. It's on a vague bell curve, right? He's like kind of normalized it. I want to talk about why characters are at the top of this list, why they might be at the bottom, and then like 2 or 3 special cases. So top characters all have a ton of skill expression, and they're pretty obviously on here, right? There's a reason that they get better the higher ranked you get. These characters typically do something very oppressive. They typically can do it while they're behind in gold, or if they can't, they get so far ahead when they win that it's just unbelievable. Like Nidalee's a great example of that. Down here a bit is Hecarim, who's a great example of that. Kindred is a great example of that. Where's Hecarim? Yeah, here he is. Karthus, Kassadin, right? These characters can take a lead and abuse it like nothing you've ever seen before. On the flip side, characters like Zoe, Gragas, Akshan, Kennen, and Kindred can all provide their benefit, or at least one really crazy benefit while behind, right? Gragas will always have his ult, Zoe will always have her bubble, Kindred will always have her ult, so on and so forth. And then at the very bottom, we have a lot of characters that either split push or do something that loses to the top characters and don't have another option. Down at the very bottom, we have Yorick, Sion, and Mundo. Anybody who knows me knows that I really dislike 2 things in this game. One is not being able to change your game plan based on the game state, and the second one is the item Heartsteel. Man, people who watch the split pusher streamers and fanboy them and play like them make I want to slam my head into a wall. I'm sorry, guys. Please stop doing that in my rank games or in your rank games. It has nothing to do with me, actually. It just really is hurting your rank and it's hurting the game. Please, please. Alois and Boss are really, really, really good players. They're incredible players. They're also really good at their style. Their style isn't split pushing. Their style is accruing a bunch of resources and then taking those resources where they're needed most on the map. Sometimes that's continuing the split push, sometimes that's grouping, sometimes that's picking people. That's what assassins do. Assassins do the same thing. If you've ever watched a really good Rengar player play, at some point, if they need to go teamfight, they're going to go teamfight and kill a bunch of people. They do the same shit that Mundo does, it just looks different. The problem is that, like, 5 Mundo players in the world can do that, and Alois is one of them, right? Alois? Alois? Whatever. I'm an ignorant American. I can pronounce things as wrong as I want. So we got the split pushers. Second class we have on here are the tanks, like the tanks. So we got Rammus, Amumu, and Sejuani are the ones that I see like way at the bottom. And then up here you've got Juggernauts, or a couple of them. I don't know. Yeah. We're gonna mostly talk about the very bottom, so that's the tanks, and then we're gonna talk about the mages. Pure tanks without the ability to solo people are really bad in solo queue. You need agency, and you need a like modular game plan. Amumu, Sejuani, and Rammus cannot change their game plan under any circumstances. Amumu has to set up big ults, Sejuani has to stand there and tank a bunch of damage in a team fight and pick one guy, and Rammus has to shut down the ADC. Well, if the ADC's not fed, Rammus isn't useful. If they won't group, Amumu doesn't do shit. And if the enemy has health shred that can just kill Sejuani, Sejuani is useless. If your team doesn't pick to play with Sejuani, can't apply Sejuani's passive, she's pretty bad, right? She's also not very good at accruing resources. None of these three characters are particularly good at accruing resources on their own. And then finally on here you have mages. That's like the third big class of characters in this bottom tier. Veigar, Malzahar, Victor, Morgana, Brand, and Zyra. And whether they're mid or support, they kind of just lose to the same thing, which is long range, dodgeable CC that you are expected to use an ability to get rid of. Morgana has an ability that beats it, but it's also the only reason she's a support, and she doesn't get played outside of support right now. Brand, Zyra, Victor, Malzahar if he doesn't have his passive, and Veigar all die instantly if they're hit by, for example, a Lee Sin kick. It's just nothing. You can't do anything. You don't provide anything to the team after that. And yeah, that's it. Those characters also all have zone control built into their kits. And that's like the main other way they provide power to their team, except for Malzahar, right? Veigar E, Victor W, Morgana W, and her old like spacing, Brand's passive forcing everyone to split up, and Zyra's plants and ulti. All are heavily better if your opponent's group, which means that if your opponents simply don't stack or don't walk into a choke, they don't work. Like, they just don't work. In general, the easier a gimmick is to play around, the further down this list it's going to be. The harder a gimmick is to play around, the further up this list it's going to be. Rengar is really, really hard to play against if he's ahead. Nidalee is really hard to play against if she's ahead. Riven, you can't. Most characters can't play against Riven at all if she's ahead. They just die when they walk near her. And yeah, that's kind of what's at the top and bottom of this list. In the middle, you're going to see most every other champion vaguely sorted by, like, skill expression, right? There's going to be some exceptions, but, like, Naafiri is an easier character to play than Talon. Naafiri's lower on this list, right? Tryndamere is a gimmicky character. The people who play Tryndamere and abuse his gimmick take him pretty high. Shen requires a lot of map awareness. Ezreal is very mechanically intensive. And then most of these top 20, 30 characters are just all considered some of the hardest characters in the game. Skill ceiling matters more than skill floor, so like even though it's pretty easy to memorize a Talon combo or survive a lane on Gragas, these characters get put high because the way that you use them perfectly is significantly harder to execute, and as a result has significantly more reward than the way that you use them to some middling effect. Finally, a couple exceptions. Darius and Kai'Sa are pretty high up here. And this just comes down to the idea of mid-range characters without consistent, like, mid to long-range crowd control are really, really hard to execute. But Darius and Kai'Sa both have crazy high rolls. If Kai'Sa builds perfectly, hits 3 items before the rest of the map, and gets to press W a bunch, or gets to assassinate people, Kai'Sa is incredibly oppressive. Her gold gain is also reliant on her early game, but her early game is weak, right? Kai'Sa's wave clear is very dependent on how quick you get her Q evolve, and until Kai'Sa gets her Q evolve, she can't get gold to get her Q evolve. So if you have a good early game on Kai'Sa consistently, you are going to stomp because you are going to accrue resources faster than your character is balanced around. Darius is basically the opposite. You have to get that first resource or he immediately falls off a cliff, but every time you keep getting a resource, he is the best champion in the game for just a little bit longer. Everyone knows how to play against Darius. Everyone knows how to play against Kai'Sa. Stay out of their range. Don't get hit by their clearly obvious, simple mid-range kits, right? Kai'Sa doesn't have some sort of long-range dash to jump scare people, except for one that requires an ADC to get into 400 attack range. Darius doesn't have anything to gap close except summoner spells. So, using your limited tools to very great effect puts characters high on this list. There are a lot of characters on this list very high with limited tools and very high effect when they use them. That raises the skill expression of a character. Ashe is much, much harder to play in solo queue than a lot of other ADCs, even though on paper she's very easy. Stop recommending Ashe to new players, please. Stop recommending Gragas to new players. Stop recommending Shen to new players. I don't think people do that anymore, but yeah, don't recommend Darius to new players. Yada yada, so on and so forth, right? What else? There were a couple other things that I thought were interesting on this list. There is a really, really low rating for Zed. Guys, Zed's counterplay is way easier than you think it is. People stop worrying about Zed nearly as much in higher ranks unless they know the person who's picking him. If Laceration picks Zed, it doesn't matter how good you are at playing against Zed, you need to be worried. But if, you know, Joe Schmo Pain and Death 42 hashtag, like, feed locks in Zed, even if he's a Masters player, like, just take it. Everybody knows how Zed places his shadows in high ranks. Everybody knows how he's gated by energy. Everyone knows that his W is a very long cooldown, that his wave clear requires him to use his burst. There are a lot of things that Zed is just... he's limited by. I think at some point I made a whole video talking about Zed's counterplay and design. And in high-low, he gets punished really hard for that. Viego and a couple other characters like that, I think Yone and Yasuo are in the negatives as well, are probably on this list because they get picked all the damn time. Just so much. So many people play them. I don't actually know what their pick rates are, but I'm sorry, guys. Bad players like these characters. I think it's true. I think bad players just like these characters. Yone in particular has a very low amount of skill expression, and while Viego can pick up a lot of characters, he's actually not particularly difficult to play. He's kind of just a farm jungler with a couple animation cancels and a slightly harder reset plan to play out than most other reset characters. And that, I think, is it. Is there anything else I wanted to think about or talk about? Oh yeah, the difference between a simple game plan and an overtuned simple game plan. So all the 5s mages down here have one simple game plan, and I mentioned that it's bad to have something easily counterplayable, but up here on the list is are a number of characters that are very all in. You've got Lee Sin, who falls off a cliff if he doesn't get ahead. You have Darius, I was literally talking about. You have Corki, who is this mid-game monster. You have Rengar and Kiana. Their gimmicks are really hard to play around, but, like, Corki just does a bunch of damage in mid-range. Sure, he zones you. He's like Darius, you have to give up farm. But, like, none of his kit is complicated. The difference is that characters up here, their payoff, if they hit, is massive. If Corki gets ahead, he will control the space in front of his champion until the game ends, right? Or until everybody else has 5 items. If Nidalee gets ahead, I think Nidalee is arguably one of the worst characters in the game because getting ahead is so hard. But when she works, she is beyond oppressive. If you have never played against a good Nidalee, I'm happy for you. Try to keep that up. If you have played against a good Nidalee, you know what I'm talking about. Also, if you haven't, go watch a VOD of one of the really best Nidalees in the world. The moment they have a game where things start going right, you're going to notice a disparity in the resources in the jungle and just in general. It's more than even just Nidalee's pressure on the jungler. It's the way that Nidalee moves around the map that's so oppressive, right? Same thing with Hecarim to a lesser extent. These characters are just so punishing when they get ahead. Pyke is like that, right? Feast or famine, but their feast is so powerful. That's about it. I think that's genuinely everything I wanted to, like, touch on. I love talking about this stuff. I would love to talk about this more. Please, if you have any questions, let me know. I don't know, I'll make a follow-up video if you want to hear me theorize about why characters are on this list in certain places. If you want to hear me talk about where characters would have been in prior patches, future patches, that's it. Thanks. See you guys later.